Hello. Today General Hospital will reveal Drew had been through many tense moments in his life, but nothing had ever filled him with such raw fear as that morning. When his phone rang and the familiar number from home appeared on the screen, he never imagined that on the other end would be a trembling voice delivering the news that Scout, his young daughter, was missing. All the sounds around him seemed to be sucked out of the room, leaving behind a chilling void and the pounding of his own heart in his chest. He froze, the world tilting on its axis, unable to tell what was real and what was nightmare. For a fleeting moment, he tried to convince himself that it was all a mistake, that Scout was only playing somewhere in the house or caught up in some harmless childhood game. But as more details were confirmed, he felt the blood drain from his body. His instincts told him immediately that this wasn't a random accident. Over the years, he had made more than a few enemies, both in his political career and in his personal life, and Scout could have easily become a target meant to send him a message. The name Sidwell was the first to flash in his mind. Just weeks earlier, Drew had confronted and openly threatened Sidwell, dragging him into a high-stakes confrontation that left the man humiliated in front of powerful witnesses. Sidwell was not the kind to forgive, and targeting Drew's daughter as a form of retaliation seemed almost too perfect. But as the first hours of the search passed, small details began to surface, details that, when pieced together, didn't match Sidwell's style. Drew remembered strange text messages from an unknown number, the cold, unblinking look in Willow's eyes the last time they met, and an uneasy feeling began to take root. Willow had once been the woman he loved and trusted, but their relationship had shattered when the truth about his affair with Nina, Willow's biological mother, came to light. He had deceived both women, carrying on with them at the same time, turning love into a manipulative game for his own gratification. Willow's silence in the aftermath had not been forgiveness, it had been preparation. Willow understood that the quickest way to break Drew was to strike directly at his heart, and Scout was at the center of her plan. She had no intention of physically harming the girl, but she wanted Drew to live through every agonizing second of fear, to feel the same wrenching loss that she believed he had deserved for so long. To her, it wasn't just revenge, it was a brutal lesson meant to make him truly understand the destruction he had caused in others' lives. Willow planned every step meticulously, from choosing a time when Drew would be too occupied to respond quickly, to planting false clues that would lead suspicion toward Sidwell. While Drew was consumed by the frantic search, the city of Port Charles kept moving forward, each thread of its own dramas quietly weaving into the larger tapestry of intrigue. Lulu Spencer was desperately seeking help to continue her mission involving Liesel Albrecht, turning to the most creative mind she knew in hopes of finding a new path forward. Carly Spencer was locked in a tense exchange with Marco Rios, balancing her need to protect Lucas with her unwavering loyalty to Sonny Corinthos, a delicate equilibrium between family and allegiance. Emma Scorpio-Drake refused to abandon her plan to infiltrate Professor Hank Dalton's lab. Gio Palmieri initially objected, but was eventually drawn in despite the looming threat of arrest. At the same time, Harrison Chase received urgent orders from his superiors about an impending arrest, and rumors swirled that the case might be tied to Gio or something far more dangerous. When Drew heard that Chase was preparing a major takedown, it only fueled his belief that Sidwell was responsible for Scout's disappearance. But the truth was still slipping through his fingers. Across the ocean, Jason Morgan met with Alexis Davis before boarding a flight to the Five Poppies Resort in Dalmatia. His mission was to find Britt Westbourne, who was currently negotiating with Pascal to maintain her supply of a vital drug. Meanwhile, Vaughn and Jocelyn Jacks enjoyed a slow morning together, plotting their next moves. But when Vaughn helped Britt apply sunscreen, Jocelyn watched from a distance in shock, realizing Britt was still alive. This revelation had the potential to upend everything unfolding at Five Poppies. For Drew, all of these events were distant echoes. His mind was wholly consumed by Scout, and by the shadow of Willow, hovering in the periphery like a silent warning. He remembered their last meeting, her eyes full of icy resolve, though he hadn't guessed then that she was already setting her plan into motion. Now, every minute that passed felt like a blade twisting deeper, forcing him to confront not only the reality that Scout was somewhere beyond his reach, but also the bitter truth that it was his own choices that had brought him to this brink. While Drew remained locked in a suffocating loop of panic and dread over Scout's disappearance, the pulse of Port Charles beat on with an unsettling regularity, each corner of the city alive with its own web of secrets, grudges, and quietly brewing conflicts. No one here ever truly stopped. Life moved forward not out of normalcy, but because each player in this city knew that hesitation was fatal. Every hour brought subtle shifts in alliances, the formation of new deceptions, and the slow unraveling of plans too tangled for any outsider to untwist. Lulu Spencer's determination had hardened into something almost unrecognizable, no longer the optimistic drive of someone hoping for a breakthrough, but the razor-edged resolve of a woman who understood that she was running out of time. Her mission surrounding Liesel Albrecht had taken on an urgency that left little room for error. She sought out the most creative mind she could trust, someone capable of weaving solutions from threads no one else could even see, someone who could find a path where walls seemed impenetrable. Lulu knew she was operating on borrowed time, that every delay could mean losing her chance completely, and so she immersed herself in strategy, drawing maps of possibilities and countermeasures in her mind. Every step forward was calculated not just to achieve her goal, but to anticipate and neutralize any sabotage before it could take root. Meanwhile, across town, Carly Spencer found herself seated across from Marco Rios in an exchange that was as much a battle of wills as it was a discussion. The air between them was taut, the weight of unspoken stakes hanging heavily over the table. Carly was navigating one of the most delicate balancing acts of her life. Protecting Lucas from both emotional and physical harm while still standing unflinchingly at Sonny Corinthos' side. These two loyalties, equal in their gravity, were on a collision course, and Carly knew that one wrong move could obliterate the careful balance she had constructed. Her mind worked constantly behind her composed exterior, dissecting Marco's every word, weighing his tone, searching for the angles he wasn't revealing. Every agreement was measured, every concession was a risk, and the longer the conversation stretched, the more Carly felt the tightening pressure of a decision she would eventually have to make. In a quieter but no less dangerous corner of the city, Emma Scorpio Drake continued to defy warnings with unshakable determination. She had locked her sights on infiltrating Professor Hank Dalton's laboratory, convinced that something hidden inside could change everything. Friends and confidants had urged her to abandon the plan, but Emma's resolve was immune to fear. She saw the lab as a fortress of secrets, and she intended to breach it regardless of the consequences. Her commitment was contagious in a way, drawing Gio Palmieri into her plans even as he wrestled with his own doubts. Gio, practical by nature, could see the storm ahead, arrest, prosecution, the dismantling of the life he had built. But the pull of loyalty and a nagging curiosity about what Emma sought proved stronger than self-preservation. Together, they moved with cautious precision, each step toward Dalton's lab bringing them closer to a point of no return. At the same time, Harrison Chase was jolted from routine into crisis mode when urgent orders came down from his superiors. The details were scarce, the kind that lived only in guarded whispers, but the urgency in their delivery spoke volumes. It was the kind of operation that could ripple far beyond the immediate target, touching lives in every sphere of the city. Rumors began to swirl even before Chase had fully processed the orders, threads of speculation weaving into the ever-present tapestry of suspicion that blanketed Port Charles. The moment Drew caught wind of Chase's orders, his instincts sharpened into certainty. This, to him, was proof of what he had believed since the first seconds after the phone call. Sidwell had orchestrated Scout's disappearance. The timing was too clean, the escalation too deliberate, the scent of calculated revenge too strong to dismiss. In Drew's mind, Sidwell's involvement fit perfectly, an enemy with the resources, the motive, and the precision to strike where it would hurt most. Yet, as the hours dragged on and Drew began combing over every piece of available information, the cracks in his certainty widened. Certain details didn't line up with Sidwell's trademark methods. Sidwell was many things, ruthless, meticulous, exacting, but he was never careless. A trail of evidence had appeared far too conveniently, as though it had been left intentionally to be found. A single clue had been planted where it would inevitably be discovered, but not where Sidwell would have placed it if his aim had been to remain invisible. Even more telling was the emotional fingerprint embedded in the execution of the act. It wasn't detached and surgical as Sidwell's work always was. There was a heat to it, a deliberate twisting of the knife meant to inflict not just loss, but an intimate, suffocating anguish. Drew could feel the shape of the truth even before he dared to put a name to it. These were the choices of someone who wanted to break him from the inside out, someone who understood his deepest vulnerabilities and had no fear of pressing on them. These were the hands of someone who wasn't just trying to win a conflict, but to make him suffer, to dismantle his sense of security in the most personal way imaginable. And as each piece fell into place, the name that rose to the surface of his thoughts was the one he had been avoiding all along, Willow. This realization didn't come like a lightning strike, it arrived like a tide, slow and inexorable, each wave carrying another fragment of recognition. The false leads designed to bleed away precious time, the manipulation of the investigation to mimic Sidwell's methods while embedding something raw and personal, the very choice of Scout as the target, every part of it spoke of Willow's mind, her hurt, her anger, and her intent. With every hour that passed, Drew's certainty grew, but so too did his dread, because understanding the truth meant confronting the reality that Scout's fate was tied to a person who had once been close enough to touch his heart. And the cruelest part of all was knowing that this wasn't about power or money, it was about pain, the kind that left scars deep enough to last a lifetime. Across the ocean, Jason Morgan's path toward the Five Poppies resort began not with the sound of crashing waves or the glitter of a foreign coastline, but with the low, deliberate voice of Alexis Davis in the dim light of a quiet office. Their meeting was a crossroads, one laced with the knowledge that once Jason stepped beyond that door, he would be entering an arena where his control would be tested at every turn. Alexis spoke with the precision of someone who understood the stakes yet could only influence them from a distance. She reminded him, without having to spell it out, that the Five Poppies was not merely an opulent retreat for the wealthy, it was a gathering point for the powerful and the dangerous, a place where deals were struck in whispers and allegiances shifted like sand underfoot. Jason, with his guarded expression and clipped nods, already knew this, but Alexis's measured warnings were the last tether to familiarity he would have before boarding his flight to Dalmatia. While Jason prepared for this journey, Britt Westbourne was already immersed in a game of survival within the resort's walls. For those who only saw the manicured gardens, shimmering pools, and faultlessly courteous staff, it might have been easy to mistake the resort for paradise. But for Britt, every marble corridor and perfumed breeze carried the weight of negotiation and control. She was locked in tense talks with Pascal, a man whose reputation was built on knowing precisely how far to pull the leash before his subject bolted. Britt's focus wasn't on wealth, influence, or even freedom, what she fought for was far more urgent and personal, uninterrupted access to the medication she needed to keep her body functioning. Pascal understood the leverage he held over her and wielded it with the casual mastery of a predator toying with its prey. Every time Britt pressed her point, he countered with subtle demands, a favor here, a promise there, each one designed to bind her just a little tighter to his will. The conversation was a chess match played in hushed tones, each move and countermove calculated to either grant her the lifeline she needed or sever it entirely. She had learned quickly that within the Five Poppies, every victory came at a price, and every concession she made was another thread of freedom cut away. Elsewhere on the sunlit balconies of the resort, Vaughn and Jocelyn Jacks shared a morning wrapped in deceptive tranquility. The world outside their room could have been any luxury escape, the golden spill of sunlight across the bed, the faint hum of the sea beyond, the quiet clink of breakfast trays being cleared away. Yet beneath this veneer of intimacy lay strategy and calculation. Over coffee and whispered exchanges, they debated their next moves, weighing not just the risks they faced but the potential consequences of inaction. The Five Poppies was a place where hesitation could be as dangerous as a misstep, and every decision they made could open a door to opportunity or seal it shut forever. It was during a stroll across one of the resort's private terraces that Vaughn's path unexpectedly crossed with Britt's. The meeting seemed harmless enough, an exchange of pleasantries under the clear Dalmatian sky, but something in the air shifted when Vaughn, in a gesture of casual kindness, offered to help her apply sunscreen. The moment was brief, almost insignificant in its execution, but from a vantage point not far away, it was enough to shatter Jocelyn's composure entirely. She had been scanning the terrace, her mind still fixed on their plans, when her eyes locked on Britt's familiar figure. In an instant, the blood drained from Jocelyn's face. Britt Westbourne was alive. The shock was so profound that it took her several seconds to process what she was seeing. All the assumptions she and Vaughn had built into their strategy, assumptions rooted in the belief that Britt was gone, crumbled in that moment. The living reality of her presence wasn't just an emotional jolt, it was a tectonic shift in the delicate structure of their plans. If Britt had survived, it meant there were forces at play neither of them had accounted for, and it raised 1,000 questions about who else might be moving unseen within the resort's shadowed corridors. These events were unfolding with the precision and inevitability of clockwork, each piece of the puzzle sliding into place without regard for the turmoil they might cause. Yet to Drew, they were nothing but the faintest murmurs from a distant shore. His world had narrowed to a singular, suffocating focus, finding Scout. He had no awareness of the subtleties playing out in Dalmatia, no reason to suspect that these seemingly unrelated interactions might, in time, loop back into his own crisis. What he could not see, what he had no way of knowing, was that he was already deep inside a psychological trap laid out by Willow with meticulous care. From the moment she conceived her plan, Willow had worked not to harm Scout physically, but to ensure Drew's emotional foundation was stripped away piece by piece. She understood with chilling clarity how fear worked. How the absence of certainty could erode the mind faster than any direct threat, how silence could speak louder than demands, and how each unanswered question could fester until it became unbearable. Willow's design was slow and deliberate, meant to draw out his suffering over hours, then days, letting anxiety grow unchecked until it consumed him. She placed Scout somewhere safe, hidden well beyond his reach, and then stepped back to watch the effect of her actions ripple through him. In her mind, this wasn't just revenge, it was the only way to make him understand the magnitude of the pain he had caused her. Drew had played with lives, deceived her and Nina simultaneously, and left behind scars that could not be erased. Now, she would make sure he carried scars of his own, etched so deeply that they would never fade. To Willow, this was justice, not in the eyes of the law, but in the unflinching court of personal reckoning. And as the hours passed, as Drew's desperation sharpened into something raw and unrecognizable, her plan was unfolding with the cruel precision she had intended from the very beginning. The city might be alive with other dramas, the resort across the ocean might hum with its own tangled plots, but in the world of Drew Kane, there was room for only one story, the story of a father chasing a shadow, never realizing the hand guiding it was one that had once reached for his in love. In the unrelenting chaos, Drew's mind became a hostile landscape, every thought a jagged fragment that cut deeper the longer he tried to hold it. He could not escape the constant loop of self-interrogation, the way his own memories now turned against him, replaying in perfect clarity all the choices he had once convinced himself were necessary, clever, or harmless. Every deception he had crafted, every half-truth spun to preserve an advantage, every calculated relationship built not on trust but on leverage, all of it surged back like a tide of ghosts, each one whispering the same damning truth. He had laid the groundwork for his own ruin. What once felt like power now revealed itself as a series of unstable structures, all of them precariously balanced on his arrogance and his belief that he could keep every piece in motion without letting a single one fall. But the pieces had fallen, one by one, silently at first, and then all at once, and now he was left standing amid the wreckage. The armor he had worn for so long, woven from charm, measured words, and strategic emotional distance, was splintering in real time. The jagged edges of his own duplicity pressed inward, cutting through any illusion that he was still in control. The fear of losing Scout was unlike anything he had ever felt. It was not a passing wave of panic, it was a constant, crushing pressure, an invisible weight that bore down on him until every breath felt like it might be his last. This was not the kind of fear that merely occupied the mind. It colonized the body, seeping into every muscle and tendon, setting his heart pounding with a rhythm that matched the relentless countdown in his head.